Hello, this is one of my speed paints for one of my old assignments for school. We're gonna do this one take because I need to fill up some time. So, in the first few minutes of this, you can see that I'm kind of like sketching, doing some rough sketches, what I call thumbnails, I guess you would say. At the time, I had a teacher who was very adamant on seeing a lot of progress, which means drawing a lot of stuff that I wasn't really fond of drawing, but I ended up drawing anyways. So all these, if not most of these, were done in Procreate, which is why I have all the speed paint for all of this. Some of it is going to be a bit weird. It's going to be cut off because I had to work on some of these assignments in class, and obviously we had to use Photoshop and stuff. And Photoshop, you can't really record your progress, so I'm only using footage of what I did on my iPad. But these are just a couple thumbnail sketches. We had each gotten a specific prompt, or not so much a prompt, but like a location kind of thing, and we would have to draw said location 3 different ways. And so I got the prompt to do an Irish pub, which, great. I'm really bad with structural backgrounds and stuff. So this was definitely a challenge for me to get my mind wrapped around. And plus, like, this is like really intense, like, studying that I had to do because I was very much a perfectionist at the time. And I hated when something didn't look right. As you can see, part of this assignment was we had to use 3D models as a sort of visual reference. Like, we would 3D model the environment ourselves, and then we would use that as a base reference for us to draw over and add our own details, of course. And because I enjoyed 3D modeling a lot, you know, this is why my drawings look very intricate. I don't know why I did that to myself, but I wanted to prove a point that I was better than everyone else, even though I low-key was not better than everyone else. But I ended up settling on 3 different thumbnails that I did out of like the 12 that I had done because he wanted a specific minimum sketches. And so here I am just kind of like roughly sketching it out. The idea I had in mind was sort of like we had to tell a story throughout each of the 3 different backgrounds. And so I decided to go with kind of like a murder scene because I don't know. Murder is, for some reason, the first thing on my mind. This is kind of like me blocking in all the shading, the shadows. Don't mind the weird cat thing that just showed up. My teacher told me to disregard the cat to make it kind of like less obvious, but more kind of like mysterious kind of thing. So with the first sketch was this one actually. It was just kind of like a nice, sort of lively Irish pub looking thing. I had to go through so many references. You don't understand. Like, the details I had to put into this was absolutely ridiculous. And you can see my 3D model looks better than my sketch. But you know what? We can't have nice things. So, as you can see in this sketch, I put like a little knife in the center table. That's where I wanted the focal point to be, because I had to make it somewhat cohesive with all 3 of the backgrounds. I also put knives in the other 2, which you will see. So, here you see my like coloring process. It is, it is a mess. You missed like some of the base coloring in this, but that's okay. You don't need to see the base coloring. So I was struggling a lot because this was kind of like one of the first assignments I really had to fully flesh out a full-on background illustration, like an environment. And so all the references I had, I kind of tried to clash together in a way to make it make sense. I also tried to give it a more rustic vibe because this was a pub, not so much like a bar or a club kind of thing. So I wanted to give it more of like a wood rustic vibe. And then Irish, I don't know why, I couldn't think of anything, so I just went with more like red and green undertones and just like some 3-leaf clovers and some horseshoes because how else would I have thrown in Irish in this photo? It was silly at the time. This was an assignment I did like, wow, 2019, 2020? This is right before COVID hit. So this was like years ago, obviously. I was but a child. An adult, but a child. So you can see I'm going through my coloring process, and I did struggle a lot because at the time I wasn't really confident, or I wasn't really consistent in how my coloring was, and I didn't know how I wanted to go about it. I wanted to be as difficult as possible while being as like precise as possible, which was frustrating. I'm really sad. I'm really mad that I did that to myself when I could have just made it easier. Like, you can see me filling in each of the shading shadows individually by hand, and I know some people do it, but it's really annoying when you do it for so long. I hate it. But I don't mind it half the time. But as you can see, I'm blocking in shadows. I'm kind of cheating around here because my 3D model had shadows and shading, and I just kind of like lasso tool and like magic wand that and just kind of dropped it in there. Like, I wasn't gonna make my own shadows out of my brain. But as you can see, I'm messing with the lighting, getting kind of final touches going for this first illustration. And I'm putting a lot of focus in the middle because it is the first thing you see, and plus the knife, I wanted it to kind of stand out, which is why it's kind of like a harsh white on the blade. And so that was the first instance of the background where it's just kind of a nice homey Irish pub, but there's a knife in the middle. And so we transition to the second illustration where it's kind of more broken down and run down, you know, like it's been abandoned kind of thing. I had a lot more fun doing this one because it kind of gave me a lot more creative freedom with like, oh, I can make this look all messy and stuff. I added little details to the line work. Of course, you know, I didn't have to do it in the line work, but because of who I was at the time, I just ended up doing it because I felt the need to make it super detailed. And so I don't know what I'm doing here. I'm assuming I'm trying to block in the shadows again, but I'm doing it from a different approach when I should have just done it from like the first approach that I did. But no, I'm making things harder for myself. So I'm individually coloring and blocking in all the shadows in red so that I know where the shadows would be, and I would adjust it later on. But I don't know why I did that right before the coloring stages. I guess it's easier, but young me doesn't know what to do. And so I also had a lot of fun with all these backgrounds because of the perspective. I've always liked understanding perspective a lot, and though I was not the best at it, I mean, this looks pretty good. I'm not gonna lie, this looks really good. But my perspective was always off in regards to objects in the space. I would make some objects look smaller or bigger than others, even though they are technically in perspective. And so I really gotta work on that. I've been out of practice, guys. I'm so sorry. That was 2019 me. 2023 me is not doing this much effort in any of my drawings. But I already got the base colors down from the first illustration. I get the colors down faster in this one. You get a different angle of the Irish pub, even though it's a bit more run down. You get to see more of the other side of the wall and kind of more of the floor spacing, a little bit more of the details, even though they're just kind of like checkerboard patterns with like diamonds. I didn't want to make that too much. And then I added a little bit of like dark, grimy, brownish red textures to make it look like it's kind of like old and run down. I'm adding more shading because I don't really know. I like to do stuff beforehand and then realize I missed something, and so I have to go back and fix it. But as you can see here, it's kind of run down. The paper says missing because there's a murder case. And you see the focal point is on that single light where there's a blade and there's some like blood dripping down from it. You can't see it too much, but you know it's there. It's kind of like subtle, and plus the missing papers kind of give you a little bit of wiggle room to figure out what that is. And so we transition into the third illustration, and it's kind of like another angle of the broken down Irish pub. You're looking in from the bartender out into the tables, and so we get a closer perspective of that knife from the second illustration that was far away. Now we're on the other side of it and we get to see closer, and there's papers underneath the stabbed knife. You know, I wanted to make it dramatic for some reason. And so you see that there's like some papers, it's a bunch of scribbles, but the big words you gotta notice is the word dead, you know. So there has been a murder, you know, and I'm insinuating that the murder happened in this Irish pub that's been broken down. And so as you can see in the inking phase, just from that you can see where I want the focal point to be, which is also in the middle. That was the only way I could direct the focal point to where I wanted the viewers to look at. And so here I am blocking in more shading, but in a different color and in a different way. It's so weird how my thought process goes, but I'm trying to use that single light as a single ray where all the shadows would kind of like point directionally towards it, so that your eyes kind of follow where I want you to go. And even with the banner that's hanging off of that booth right there, that's going towards that smaller knife in that center table. And that's kind of what I wanted to do, kind of like have your eyes lead towards it. Even that fallen like streamer is going straight towards down, kind of helps your eyes lead towards it. I said that like 3 different times. And then there's also a wine bottle right next to the tap that's pointing like straight directly towards it as well. And even the knife on the table that's stabbed or onto the countertop is slightly pointed directly towards it. I really mentally tried my best with this assignment. Our teacher has definitely put high expectations on us, and so that's kind of what I projected in these projects. There's another project we did, but I don't like that one as much because it was more loose, and I kind of experimented some more because that's what I did back then, because I didn't know what I wanted to stick with style-wise that would be industry standard. But so here you see I'm adding like a bloody handprint, because if I wanted to make it more obvious, there was a murder that happened here. There's another knife on that table, and then there's also this knife that's right here in the foreground. But here I'm adding some grimy textures to make it look more rundown. I muted the colors a bit, as you saw, like that 0.3 seconds. And I'm blocking in my shadows again, in blue because the light is yellow, so you gotta use opposite color for the shadows and stuff. I really did take all of the knowledge that I got from school and applied it into these illustrations, and yet I took none of it back with me with my current drawing. I guess I did pick some. I'm just staring at this, and it's been a while since I've looked at any of these drawings because I'm proud of them, but it's also a part of my past that I don't really want to look at too, because it was a lot of stress during the time. But I'm just baffled on how I was able to create this. Like, I love the colors in the first one. This one was my weakest one, I'll admit. And then this last one was kind of stronger. I still am not fond of the colors, but I like the direction. But I hope you enjoyed that. Yeah. Bye!